Welcome to Surrender School.
So let's start with the mission statement. At Surrender School, we recover. Our mission is to share 12-step and other supportive recovery solutions to those who want a healthy relationship with food. We are not an official 12-step meeting, but we do try to adhere to the spirit of the traditions. All of us came from this 12-step world, and so we love the 12 steps. Okay. Here is everything that we currently have in session. We have workshops. This is interesting. Hold on just a second. All right. It's all good. Okay, hold on. Sorry. All right. So we have the workshop, this one, Supercharge Your Recovery, Sunday at 10:30. We also have office hours that are tied to that on Monday and Thursday at 8 a.m. Pacific and also Monday at 4 p.m. Pacific. We have First Friday Enneagram Exchange, which begins in October of 2025. The book study, The Alchemy of the Enneagram and Transforming Addiction with the author, Michael Naylor. The next session is tomorrow, and it is June 16th at 10:30 Pacific. He's going to cover type 6, which is chapter 9 in the book. We also have reading rooms, Drop the Rock, Wednesdays at 3, AA 12 and 12, Tuesdays at 1:30, and the Emotional Sobriety book, Tuesdays and Wednesdays from 8 to 9. We are almost done with that. And after that, we are going to be reading The Wisdom of the Enneagram, which is this giant book that will probably take us a decade to finish. Maybe not, but it's going to be a long time because it's a big book. And it's also really, really excellent, as is the Emotional Sobriety, AA 12 and Drop the Rock. And right now it's the Ripple Effect. The Drop the Rock is Drop the Rock, the Ripple Effect, which is the next book in that series. All right. Linda T. held a 30-day intensive daily recovery workshop, all of it recorded, all of it is out there on the website. So please feel free to take a look at that. I've heard great things about it. It is on my list for this summer. Also, almost at the end of the 12-week step study that Amber is doing. So, but you may want to drop in on that Saturday at 10 a.m. And then you'll see at the bottom the First Friday Enneagram Exchange, which is a podcast style thing that Michael Naylor and I are doing, will start in October. So we'll give you more details as we get closer to that. All right, so here is everything that we have to offer. Consider taking. The past workshops or book studies, all of them are recorded and out there. We have a lot of content on Surrender School. Experience in the meditations 5 steps. I did do the step 6 meditation. It was beautiful. Working through the step study alone or with a sponsor. Every year we have a step study that we put out there. Obviously this year, this is the big step study, lasting the whole year. Next year, I've been asking around, and I think what we're going to do is probably reserve this space and do the whole thing in like 6 months or 4 months or something like that, and then make it kind of sharing the rest of the year, something like that. Still not worked out, but it won't be the full year, I think, because my dream is that you all come back and we do it again, just a little bit deeper year after year. I think that'd be really cool. Okay. And then consider attending in person our retreat that we're going to have in 2026. And at some point, Joy and her team or whoever is on that team, I don't know, I'm not part of the board, so we'll be sharing information on that. All right. All of this can be found on surrenderschool.org. Consider being a volunteer. We always need volunteers for all kinds of things, so reach out to Lori B if you want to volunteer for something. All right. If Surrender School has helped your recovery, please donate. There is a donate button at the bottom of the website. I think there's something at the top too, but please feel free to donate. We do have expenses. None of the people that do the work, we're all volunteers. None of us get any money for what we do. But we do have expenses like the website and Zoom. And of course, if we're doing a retreat, there'll be expenses with that too. So consider donating. Thank you. All right, there is a Surrender School WhatsApp group. You'll want to join that if you'd like to. Lots of information out there, lots of sharing out there. You also may want to sign up for the Daily Ennea Thought from the Enneagram Institute. That is Russ Hudson, Don Riso, those people, Sandra Maitre, anyway, some of the Enneagram people, and they will send you you can get 2 different ones. So it might be your type in a wing, or it might be your type and your spouse or daughter or something like that. Anyway. And they're really nice, just a quick couple of sentences, but they're very helpful. I think I read mine every day, and that gives me something to focus on. Let's take a moment to feel your breath going in and out of your body. And feel your feet on the floor. Usually we don't feel our bodies unless there's some kind of pain somewhere. So feel your feet on the floor and the breath going in and out. This is a practice to just be present. Let go of everything that happened this morning or before, and let go of anything that you're worried about in the future. And let's say the set aside prayer together. God, help me to set aside everything I think I know to leave space for what I have yet to learn. All right. The goal of this course is a personal journey. And I think as we move more and more into this, even though the types are the types, what I'm finding is the shares become even more different as opposed to more alike because you're learning on your own personal journey, right? Which I think is awesome. Our focus is to help you understand the relationship between your false self, that ego self, and your true self, that true shining self that you are, and to treat yourself with unrelenting compassion because you're human, which means since you're human, you make mistakes, you do things wrong, but you're also a shining example of can be a shining example of love and acceptance. Okay, so some things to keep in mind. I used to put this on here and Joy convinced me not to, but I'm not an expert on anything. I'm not a therapist. I'm nothing like that. I'm somebody who's worked a program for a long time, somebody who believes that the Enneagram can really help supercharge our recovery. And so I show up talking about the things that I believe. Doesn't mean you have to believe them at all or buy into them at all. It just means that they're my view of things. All right. We do believe if you work the steps by type, just take the test if you don't know that already. Sorry about this stuff popping up. I used to have a friend that he said, words are your friend. When things like that pop up, do something about it. Whatever. I don't, and it pops up every week. Sorry about that. All right, so take the test. It'll guide you. I believe very strongly that self-contempt stops spiritual growth, or at least really, really slows it down. It's as if my higher power says you can grow spiritually or you can hate yourself. Can't do both. So you pick and I'll wait. So I prefer to have spiritual growth as opposed to self-contempt. But that's a practice that I do. That's not just, I don't default to that. Right? That's a practice that I have. All right, do the work. And we do believe that your recovery will be supercharged. And I want to remind everybody, you can be a lot of things in the world. So choose to be kind. Be kind to yourself and be kind to other people as well. All right. I keep this slide because I want to remind you that this is really what it's all about. And that is when we ask questions, what we're trying to do is we're trying to realize that we're trying to see our patterns as patterns. We want to be able to see the patterns. That's what 4, 5, 6, and 7 are about. And the projections as projections, which are the stories that we tell ourselves. We see them as stories. And the more that you see them, the more that they can dissipate. If you don't see them, there's no chance of working on them, right? The only way we can do that is if we see them. All right. So I want to do a quick reality check. I've got a couple reality checks today because here we're halfway through and I want to be sure that we cover this. And just like, I think it comes from Al-Anon, it talks about first there's awareness, then there is acceptance, and then there is action. And I want to tie that to these stories that we're telling ourselves. The first thing that we have to do is this awareness that, oh, this is a story I'm telling myself. That's the first thing. This is a story that I'm telling myself. That's the awareness. The second one is, what is the story that I'm telling myself? Okay, this is a story I'm telling. What is this story that I'm telling myself, right? And be able to say, okay, and be able to articulate the story that I'm telling myself is this. Almost always, by the way, this comes from ego. And then the final piece is, what is the cost and ego benefit to this story? That's the why. Why am I telling this story to myself? And almost everything that happens in the world that we take personally, we need to ask these questions of. Oh, okay, this is a story I'm telling myself. What is the story that I'm telling myself? And what is the cost and ego benefit of me telling the story to myself? Okay, all right. So, with that in mind, who would like to share a story, that you've been telling yourself? This is a hard one because this is like showing our soft underbellies. So, Robin.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I'm not sure. I don't know exactly the answer to the last two questions, but the first two questions, it's really interesting because last week when we did the bracket and Dave shared and he talked all about in the eyes about his experience, and it went into depth. And I immediately went to, I did it wrong. And at the time, I didn't recognize that as a story I was telling myself. Although I think the progress that I made from that did happen to me, where I was kind to myself, was because I did it all in terms of relationships. Like I could, and I think I partly got off on that because you used the example of your husband with the dishwasher. So I thought, oh, I can think of 10 people that I have a fixed complaint about and a way of behaving. So the kindness I had for myself was, well, I'm a 2, and I'm naturally going to be thinking in terms of relationships and focusing on others. But what's also interesting to me is that what I was doing is comparing myself to someone else. And that's like the opposite of humility, which is the gift of, the type 2, to have humility. So I told myself that, the story I told myself is that I was wrong, that I did it wrong. And what were the other questions? So the cost.
So just realizing that you told the story is the first part. The second is
Right.
What is the story? And then the third, what's the cost and benefit? That's the why. So why do I tell myself this story is the third one.
Right. Well, and so the second part, that I was, by comparing myself to someone else and thinking that I'm less than, that's the thing that the stories I tell myself are frequent, and I'm so much more aware. And I do like the 3 A's. And I know that for me, with my background in Al-Anon, that I need so much is that I end up being focused on thinking that taking everything personally, right? And that's they have so many slogans that I continue to need from Al-Anon, which is people aren't doing things to me, they're just doing things. And so the other story that came up when I went into your office hours that was really helpful, although I resisted it because I was so much in the story, but I was focused on my stepson at that time not being interested in me. And you gave a very vivid example of, unless he gets in your face and says, I'm not interested, it's a story I'm telling myself. So then I was able to recognize that was true. And it's just one of so the cost, I know the answer to, at least a partial answer, is the cost is that I give my power away to other people. I make whatever someone else is doing more important. And then I can tell myself that I'm not important. And because I'm so focused on their behavior and what they're doing or not doing. So that, I think that might be at least part of the cost. And the other part is the benefit. How does it?
So I'll talk about the 2 benefit. I don't know if this is true for you, but I will say this is what I found with 2s. Then they feel less than, so they are humble, and then they're very proud of their humility. Right? Yeah. So the benefit is, look how wonderful. I'm a nicer person than I would never.
Oh, okay.
I would never, right, like
Right.
that. So, and I want to say it is cost and ego benefit. So,
Ego.
and so one of the things, and once again, I'm not a therapist. I'm nothing like that. I'm just a long time, and I'm a work. When I work, right? So I've worked program. So, but I want to say I've kind of narrowed it down to 2 voices inside my head. IFS and all those will tell you there's 13 or whatever. I don't care. It doesn't matter. To me, there's 2. There is God, who is kind, and there is my ego, who's an asshole. There are 2 for me. And so anything that tells me you're a piece of shit, oh, that's right, you're a piece of shit, is not God. God doesn't talk to me like that ever. Right. And so, and it's the same thing there. When you feel less than, to me, feeling less than is never the voice of my higher power, ever. Now, that may not be true for other people. I don't know. But for me, no. And then some people say, why would I want to do that? Well, I don't know. Maybe you want to be happy. I don't know. Maybe I'm simple. I agree. I mean, and maybe all of this is a fucking spiritual bypass. I don't know. But I know I'm happy and I'm going to heaven. So life is good.
Feeling less than is never humble. I mean, so I'm pretty well aware of that. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But so, and to me, once people realize, and sometimes it's like, this is a story, and I'm going to tell a story of somebody, and I don't want to hurt her feelings, but this is a perfect example of a story. whoever you are, do not have your feelings hurt by this. It's just a really good example of a story. Okay. A friend comes to town and doesn't call. I'm going to say him. Friend comes to town, doesn't call him. And he feels bad about it because this friend is a friend and they didn't call. Right. And so this guy is just making up all these stories about why this person did call, and it's rude and it's awful. Feels kind of good that they didn't get in their face or whatever, but eventually they call him and say, are you going to get together with me? And the person says, oh, I'm so busy. Right. Then one day he walks up to the mailbox to get his mail. And when he comes back, this woman has left a message on his answering machine that says, oh, I'm sorry I missed you. I was trying to get a hold of you so we could get together. Now that person comes to me and says, that really pissed me off. They're playing a game, da, 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 da. Right. Now, here's what makes it a perfect story to tell. So does this guy believe that this person put a spy there to watch when she walked up to the mailbox to be sure that she called at exactly the right? No, it's absolutely a story that you're telling yourself. So then the question is, first of all, recognize, oh, this is a story I'm telling myself. And then secondly, what is the story I'm telling myself? That this person purposely called when I was not available? Okay. What is the cost of that? Probably, maybe your relationship. But what's the ego benefit of that? What is the ego benefit? I get to have hurt feelings. I get to feel like I would never do that. Whatever, right? Does that make sense? So yeah, so that is one of those things that it doesn't feel like a story. It feels like the truth with a capital T, but it's not. So much of what we do, and some of this comes from the fact when I was a deputy, right? When you write reports, at least it used to be this way, you literally you couldn't say this person felt this way. How the fuck do I know how they felt? I don't know how they felt, right? You can't say this person was angry. How do I know that? They were yelling. Yes, they were yelling. Guess what I put in the report? They were talking loudly. They were yelling. Not how they felt. I don't know how they felt. I don't get to devise that. So I think just from that background, I learned to kind of pull it just so that I have just the facts versus all this other stuff that are my assumptions, the story I'm telling myself. Thank you, Robin, for that. Very much. I appreciate you sharing so much. Joe, to you. Joe, to you.
I have a story I tell myself like every night, and it's really strange because during the day I'm fine, and then at nighttime I'm like, I go into complete victim. I'm all alone, I'm rejected, I'm abandoned, I'm like, nobody loves me, nobody wants me. This happens the minute darkness falls, and it's probably, you know, I know we shouldn't go into the past and whatever, but I was told my dad I died in a car crash in the middle of the night. It was pitch black outside. So I think my brain just goes, oh, pitch black, you're all alone. It's all catastrophe and all the rest of it. And I was really trying to figure out what the benefit of that was, why I keep doing it. What am I getting out of it? Because you keep saying, the ego is protecting me and it's trying to get something out of it. I'm like, well, what on earth can it get out of it? But then I realized, and I remember someone saying a few months ago on here, that they said, oh, I'm not a manipulative person. I was so shocked when I found out I was manipulative. And that is exactly what has dawned on me, is that I'm manipulating this situation because I'm like going to, I'm WhatsApping people going, nobody loves me, nobody wants me at night. During the day, I'm like really ashamed and I'm like, this is ridiculous behavior. It's like a small helpless child, it's crazy. And I realized it's because, if I'm a victim, it's a way to get help because I can't communicate. I really struggle with communicating my needs effectively, which is why it's taken months and months to speak up on here, and Friendly Circle I don't still. But the other manipulation is to throw all my toys out the cot so that people will just be like, oh my God, stay away from her. And then that's a self-fulfilling prophecy to me. It tells my brain that, yeah, you are alone. Look, no one wants you. And then I can stew with my feelings and validate my own feelings. And yeah, I knew I was shit. It's like that sort of trauma loop. It's like keeps repeating in my head going, ha, told you, Joe, you're not wanted. But it's like I'm doing it myself. It's so bizarre.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. Everything you said. Yes. Okay. And this is why, how I say I don't have an arrow or a wing to the fore because, and I don't know how many other eights are here, but as
you're lucky. You're very lucky.
Well, I guess, but I could not allow myself to be a victim in any way. I cannot even imagine being comfortable being a victim. I mean, at all. So that's why I'm just like, but I do what I see and it's just my impression, is that fours do, there's a comfort to that. There's a comfort to being a victim. Even if we've been like literally a victim, there's still a comfort to being that. It's a role that we're grabbing and it feels comfortable. So one of the things I'm doing next week is I'm going to talk about when we pick whatever that defense is, that we're going to have to grieve when we let it go. We're letting something go that we are so accustomed to. So next week, we're going to talk about the grief of letting go of something that we have made. It's more than a habit, but we certainly have made it a habit, right? Because like you said, and it becomes this kind of cascade of things. I don't know what that feels like from a victim perspective, but I know what it feels like from a compulsive eating perspective, that I become this victim of this, whatever it is, this behavior that feels monstrous and unstoppable, right? And only through program is it stoppable. So I do understand that snowball down the hill. I completely get that piece of it. I just don't from the victim perspective, but I hear you. And I'm really glad you're speaking up, because this is exactly what we're working on. This is it right now. And one of the things that I talked about is because many of the people last week were talking about, and I'm using my own words here, this tsunami of feelings that I can't pull a feeling out and deal with it, right? So maybe the defect is the tsunami itself, that it's like this tsunami of feelings. Okay, so in step 7, I'm going to say that tsunami does stand in the way of my usefulness. It does stand in the way of that. So help me with that. Greater power, help me with this tsunami so I can pull out a feeling and deal with it one at a time. Michael Naylor, and
that was very interesting.
Yeah, I think so too. And Michael Naylor is a 4, and he believes you can work on one thing at a time. You can't work on, this giant amount of stuff all at once. I'll talk more about that later on today. But but with the 4s, I think that is difficult to do. So anyway, I'm so curious.
I got a diagram. I made a diagram today of how I'm going to do it. And it just came to me. I was talking to a friend. She was doing this spiritual thing. She had me as her candidate sort of thing, recorded it. And suddenly I was like, big circle, feelings. Because I said to her, it is a tsunami. When you wrote that word and I only checked it today, I was like, oh my God, that's it. Because I have like 15. It's like having 15 children and they all want different things. And it's like, so I just go into overwhelm. So I used to shut down and get depressed. Whereas now I just go into overwhelm and I just do nothing for hours because I'm just going spinning. And so I thought, right, I'm going to just put that down. And I've got all these arrows, in, out, chaos. And then I thought, because I'm quite a process person as well. And I thought, well, if I number them all, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then put each feeling down, a bit like the pause, but I can't do the pause because there's 15 of them.
Right.
So then I thought, okay, I'll do that and attribute each one and then go from there. And then I can just pick one out because it's in front of me on a picture.
Yes, no, absolutely. And you can say, okay, all you 14 others, I'll get to you eventually. Right now, I'm working on this one. The rest of you, I appreciate you. Thank you so much, but not right now. Right? Yeah. Just like you would in the 15 kids. All of you can cry, feel free. I don't care. I'm dealing with this one right here. So awesome. Thank you, Joe. Thank you. Jasmine, to you. Thanks, Joe.
It's so interesting. Somebody wrote in the chat that 2s and 4s have some type of link together. I experienced it that way because I could relate to Robin's taking everything personally, and I can relate to Joe's being like wiped out with the shame spiral or the spiral. Mine is shame. It happened to me yesterday. My breathing was different. I couldn't focus and I wasn't grounded. I just couldn't get my footing, like the emotional despair. And it was from a story I was telling myself. I'm ashamed to share it, but I'm going to because I think I need to. All right. My son has a dysfunctional family, not only from me, but on his dad's side. There have been, the usual favoritism, the comparison between the children. He has children by different women, my son's father. So I've always been defensive about it. Like, don't slight my child. Like, I don't even know. And it's not even something that I'm for sure is real. It's just like me with my hypervigilance growing up with my grandmother who showed favoritism between her grandkids. Anyway, it's my old stuff. I get that. But it makes the mama bear come out. It makes me get defensive and protective. Like they are trying to slight him or And then it makes me feel like I need to protect him, which may or may not be the case. Actually, it's probably not warranted in any reality. It's just like my head is messing with me. I lose sight of sound thinking. I have cognitive distortions. I'm like hyper vigilant. And it's a bizarre thing, but what I was telling myself is that he's being rejected, he's being neglected, he's being alienated. And it was really my inner child who felt those things. And it was like triggering my inner younger self. And so what I had to do was like reparent that part and just take time and just stop what I was doing just to talk it through and just get it to calm down. And it was like, I'm projecting it onto this child. It may or may not even be true. But now I can take a step back and look at myself being wiped out, like with the wave of emotions that I can't even it's like I can't even, it's like I'm wiped out, like a surfer getting wiped out by a wave. I can't find any reason or calm anywhere in sight.
And
But anyway,
this is a perfect thing to do the racket on. You know that it's a repeatable thing that happens over and over and over again. He seems to favor his other kids, right? And you react a certain way. This is a perfect thing to do the racket on because it is a persistent complaint and a fixed way of being. Sit down and figure out the cost and the ego benefit to this. And once again, I say ego benefit, but it could be that, like you said, that's a childhood thing for you that just keeps coming up and you know what I'm saying? But I do think, once again, for me, the racket helped me just be able to say, why it is a story that I'm telling myself. Okay. And what is the story that I'm telling myself? And why am I telling myself that story? What's the cost? What's the benefit? Why is that happening? And it is helpful. And like I said, I don't do this often. I have to be kicking and screaming to sit down. I wish that I could say, and so every day I do a racket. I don't. I have to be the point of like, okay, I'm going to drive myself and everyone else crazy if I don't do something about this before I do the racket. I've known it for 25 years but I have to be desperate before I do it. So this is one. And then what you do, okay, so first of all, you just accept, okay, I mean, you love yourself through this anyway, even because what's wiping you out is that, right, you have that shame and that unacceptance. Just, you know what, I'm human and okay. And then what you do is you do the racket. And then the next time this kind of thing comes up, you say, oh, I'm telling myself a story here. I see what's happening. Okay, why am I tempted to tell myself a story? Right? And then you can watch yourself be different. Because this is all, by the way, step 7. That's why I'm having you do one thing, because I want you to be able to see the change. If you're trying to do something giant, right, then no, it's like, well, this one thing I'm working on, whatever that is. And when I'm asking my greater power to help me with it, I get to see the change. And then I go, oh, this is where the power comes in, right? So anyway, thank you, Jasmine, very much for that. Jim, to you.
Thank you, Cher. Okay, so as everyone knows, I sort of a bit arse over elbow the work that I was doing. Last time I did the defense analysis, opposite behavior, willingness assessment, believing it was for last time, but it was a racket. So I've now done the racket, and the thing that keeps on coming up, I was really surprised because I've written on the defenses something very similar to what I've written on the racket, and that really surprised me. So in the racket, and if I may talk, I know it's last week, but I will bring it back. So in my persistent complaint is a property management company. People have heard me speaking about that. So never doing any work to the ruination of my property. That's a persistent complaint and a fixed way of being. Repeatedly asking ask the same company to make repairs, expecting a different outcome. So carrying on that conversation until nervous exhaustion takes over and the pointless conversation ends with no positive outcome. Okay, so what's the cost? Ruminating. I ruminate on this. When I speak about it, I ruminate constantly. I vent on the same issue, which leads to living the disrepair emotionally and mentally, as well as being in a physical space. So what is the payoff and benefit? Nothing. There is no payoff. There is no benefit. I may be right in what I describe, but I now understand I'm living in avoidance or a mild form of self-pity expressed through righteousness. Now, what really surprised me was when I did the defense analysis last week, I spoke about avoidance. I chose avoidance, and amongst a whole list of different points. And so how does my ego think it helps me? It stops me from being hurt, in terms of avoidance, and it stops confrontation, and the self-pity, or I even included envy in that. It makes me believe. Okay. So if I vent about the issues that I face with this property management company and how it makes me feel, I get to, in terms of avoidance, it gets me to the point where, although I see the disrepair, it's almost like it doesn't exist either. I'm just living in it. Might not make much sense. So what does it cost to me? It costs me progress in my life. It costs me.
And the question that we're asking you, you did answer, right? That you get to feel righteous, you get to feel right, you get to feel all of that. And by the way, I'm not pretending or even acting like this solves the problem of your having disrepair. It doesn't solve jack shit about that, right? So,
No.
but then you have a very clear choice. I live in disrepair, or right. And it isn't even that I mean, even that is like, I live in disrepair. I don't want to do that. Or what do I continue to rag on them? It's the, when you're not talking to them, you carry it with you, because you do. That's what you just said.
Yeah.
You ruminate in
Yeah.
it, and then you're basically trash too. So this, I mean, and I wish that I could say, and then you can go to them kindly and talk to them nicely, and then they turn around. It's like, that's fucking bullshit. That's not going to happen either. So, right. So this isn't, if you want a class from me on how to solve problems, I can teach it to you, but this is not it. So, right. I guess it's not, but
No.
I used to manage
But I know
projects,
how.
so I know how to do that, but yeah, it's not. So does that make sense, Jim? So it isn't.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I mean, I
Avoidance.
know where I need to go with this, but I've just been
Okay.
avoidance, and this been a great process for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think a very good process, but I think you're right. So, and once again, the racket, I don't think works on everything, especially if, like, because nines do avoid things. That's like your thing. And then what am I going to do? Tell you to avoid things, right? No. But anyway, so much of this is flavored by type. Much more. This is what I'm running into when people are asking me questions. I'm like, I don't know. I am not a guru on the Enneagram. I'm new to this too. I'm just learning it. I'm like a chapter ahead of you in the book, right? So I'm just like, well, let me tell you what I think from what I've learned so far, right? Anyway, thank you, Jim. Yeah, absolutely. Because some of that, the benefit of keeping it in your head is the fact that you can stay a victim, which fours like to do. So I hear, but the right, and then the solution to it is probably a discussion for a completely different day. But I do hear what you're saying, because somewhere between this avoiding paying attention to it at all, right, which is just like, I'm not going to do that, and this, right, somewhere in the middle of that is some kind of acceptance of, I don't know what, right? Somewhere in the middle of it is, you don't carry it with you. You don't vent to anyone who crosses your path about it. You don't carry it with you. I'm going to give an example of this right now. I have a dear friend. I have an MRI on my right breast on Tuesday. And she reached out to me and she said, so tell me, are you worried? Are you right? And I really am not worried. And it isn't because of any belief about what the outcome is. It's just, it either is or it isn't. And I can't do anything about it until I know that I have to make a decision. I can't do anything about it. This is so new for me. I'm a ruminator. I'm a wring my hands, feel like that's part, my job is to wring my hands, and I'm not doing it. I will find out, do I have cancer or I don't have cancer? And I can't make any decisions until I know. And wringing my hands between now and then doesn't help me. It robs me of today. Right? Now that sounds obnoxiously virtuous, doesn't it? But that's how I feel, which is an amazing thing for those that have known me for years and years. Oh my God, I have always been a worrier, and I'm not now. Over something like this, it's astounding to me. And this is because I'm working the supercharge stuff. So, okay, Sarah, to you.
Hey, I'm Sarah, recovering codependent, and I guess you guys are just gonna hear from a lot of twos today. But I wanted to say that the story I've been in I started recovery in 2020, November of 2020. So I've been on this journey for 4.5 years, and I've become very apathetic, kind of. And so the story I was telling myself, which is that trying is stupid because I was trying and it didn't get me anywhere, and so I don't want to try anymore. And I went through this. So I'm a 2, but I'm also an extrovert, and so I've always been very like socially active and had friends. And this last year, I kind of like shut down. Like I stopped going out. I stopped trying to make new friends. I called it I was hermiting. I'm hermiting. And I think some of that was healing. Like I don't think all of that was necessarily I think some of it was like healing, but recently I've been trying to get back out and do this stuff, but I've had to kind of confront this story of like, it does matter, and that some like trying. So I think my ego was telling me, let's just not try, because every time we've tried in the past, it hasn't resulted in what I've wanted, right? Which I think that's part of me letting go of, expectations lead to future resentment. So I have to let go of expectations. And then so that's the story I've been telling myself. And then, but recently, one of the things I've been struggling with was like going back to the gym, because I've been feeling very apathetic about doing anything. And I'm also trying to do this thing where I'm trying to separate my physical beauty from my physical health, which as a woman is very difficult. And so I need to go to the gym, not because I want to be pretty or get a boyfriend, but because I don't want to like be in pain. Like I had a grandmother who's like, at like 55, she just said she wasn't going to walk anymore. And I don't want to be that lady. I want to be someone who was like way into her like 90s, like still dancing. I mean, not that I dance now, but maybe I will in my 90s. And like I want to be that kind of like person. And so, but it's been a struggle. Like all of that's been a struggle. So the story I was telling myself about that was like the only reason to go to the gym, is to be thin or to like get a boyfriend or whatever. And obviously that's not true. That's something I learned as a teenager from like Teen Vogue or whatever that crap was. And so now I'm having to like unpack all that. I don't know if I'm even making any sense, but I just wanted to say that I've been dealing with my apathy, which I've never been an apathetic person before. Like that's never been something that I've necessarily dealt with. And I think that that's a defense mechanism from like dealing with my type 2-ness and my codependency, which has like cost me a lot of things. And so I think the like opposite was to like become like apathetic, like just not try, like, because I think I was over trying. I don't know if that makes any sense. I was overdoing because I thought I had to do in order to earn love. And so then I just stopped doing. And then, so now I'm trying to find some sort of balance, which codependents have a hard time with balance. So I'm trying to find balance. Anyway, I don't know if did I answer the question, Cher? Did I leave anything out?
Yeah, I think because it's the story that you're telling yourself. And yeah, all of that, I think, although for some reason my inner Yoda keeps kicking in. There is no try, there is do or not do.
Yeah, there's only do. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you, Sarah. No, not that I live that way, so thank you. I can identify. Thank you, Sarah. All right, Jennifer, to you.
So the shares today have been immensely helpful, and Joe's talk about tsunami resonated, and it had me look back at my list again. And then Jasmine's share had me again in a bit of panic at the thought of letting go of my primary defense, panic that it's impossible, blah, 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 blah. And so I looked at this again because part of what I was going to say is you challenged us to pick our number one defense. And I went to like, okay, maybe picking the one that is the most extreme, even though it might unlock the others, isn't as effective as picking one of these lesser ones and practicing. But then I looked at my list and I realized up into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them also feel impossible. But then I found one that may be able to be nipped in the bud. And then that led me to conversations that I used to have with my executive coach about the process, you know, the difference between the CBT and the old behavioral health, you know, or even within the spiritual domain of focusing and doing your work on the content of the issue, which can, over 20 years of being on the same spiritual path and from a trauma standpoint, like you're still in the same place, at least I am, in many fundamental ways, as opposed to the cognitive behavioral therapy approach and the Buddhist, right, the meditation of just boom, da 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 da, and just move your attention, just move your attention. And so this is both a observation with a little bit of a question in it. I saw you do that, so I want to hear about that. And also, oh, and one other thing. So putting together, weaving all my thoughts around. When I was out a little earlier, getting my nails done, somehow or another, the control thing came up. And I just reminded myself that the task, and you have put it out there, is that to ask God to remove the shortcoming, that I can't do it. Obviously, can't do it, can't conceive of doing it. So just all of that to say, I'm struggling, I'm grappling, but not struggling in a bad way, period.
So yeah, okay. So I want to say, so we're gonna, so Ambra and Elham, we'll catch you later because we got to move on. But I want to say, I try to be really careful to say, whatever as you pick as your one defense, it might be the easiest, it might be the one that impacts your life the most. You have to decide what that is, whatever that is, because by different types, some, right, as a courageous pathfinder, the 6, it is absolutely part of your being to say, I'm going for that. I'm going on that path that nobody's ever been on before. It absolutely. Whereas for the 9, probably not so much, right? They probably wouldn't do that. I'm going to pick something easy. So, because the purpose of this, and I'm going to talk about this later, the purpose of what we're doing right now is to create a practice to be able to do this with all of those defenses that you come up. Not for us to be, you know, for the birds singing and the sun is shining and all that every single day, because I didn't know. It's really, let's talk about how do you use step 6 to figure out what it is, and then how to use 7 so that you can pull the power of the universe in to help you. That's really what 6 and 7 are about, right? And we're taking 2 months, so I'm sure some of you are like, let's go, let's go, let's go. Right? And others are like, no, wait. What can I say? Anyway, so yeah, you're right on track. And however you want to do it, some people will pick just something that is easy, great. Some people will pick the hard one because in the belief that all the other things fall into place, and that's probably true. So like mine was, the first one that I worked on had to be anger because it was destroying my life, right? And so I have worked 6 and 7 in that way, so that I don't live an angry life at all. And it's such a blessing to live that way. Okay, are we ready, Lori, for the breakout rooms?
Chair, it's Shirley. Can you just give a quick overview of what you want us to do in the breakout room?
Yeah, let me share. Actually, if she's ready to go, let me talk about. So once again, we're going to share on the 4 questions. At the bottom here of that first section, you'll see it. The assignment is to answer the 4 questions. That is, how does your ego think? So you take your defense. The racket was on something, whatever. Now you pick your one defense, whatever that is. And once again, if you have 3 of them, I think, Ambra, you said you had 3, pick one. And you're going to answer the question, how does the ego think it helps you? What does it cost you for that defense to jump up without your permission? And then what do you fear about letting it go? And how will you benefit from letting it go? So you're going to imagine what it feels like to basically be in that position. Okay, so once again, the 4 questions for your defense. 1 and 2 is, what is the cost? What is the benefit to your ego? What do you fear? And what would life be like if it were removed? That's what you're going to share on. That's what those 4 questions are. Is everybody ready? All right, go ahead. Thank you, Lori.
Okay, here we go.
All right, so real quick, I want to do another reality check. And this butterfly, I think this is a beautiful slide. I love it. And I'm going to have this butterfly here whenever I want to do, from here until the end of the year, a reality check. Okay, so here's the reality check. This step 6 is a practice to create a practice. So in other words, and Jennifer brought that up earlier, you can do the big thing that gets in your way, like I did with anger. That's great. or you can do something small. The main thing is what you can't do is something so giant. And what I mean by that is, Robin, I'm going to come back and talk about something that you said a couple weeks ago, I think. And you talked about what you learned when you did the step 5 is that you abandon yourself. So here's the thing. You could do, I abandoned myself. That's fine. But it's going to be really difficult for you to see when you abandon yourself. We're going to talk about this a little bit more next week in specifics. But it's like, but you can ask the question, in what way do I abandon myself? And then all of those defects on the side, you'll say, like for the 2, I abandon myself when I do whatever it is, right? That defense list. So I will cover that, but basically what I want to do, let's see if I don't think that I have. And once again, we're back to the eagle who chases 2 rabbits, catches neither, but the eagle never tries to capture or attack a coyote. They know better than that. What they go after are mice and bunnies and that kind of stuff, right? The little stuff. Okay. So this is what I'm talking about. So if I were to say I abandoned myself, and that's what I'm going to ask my higher power, my greater power to remove in step 7, I'm not sure I'd be able to see the change. And seeing the change is what's going to make me do more and make this a practice. So what you would do is, instead of, you ask the question, when do I abandon myself? And let's say you're boundaryless. When I do not set a boundary, I am abandoning myself. What you want to work on is when I don't set a boundary. So you want basically that defect of boundarylessness, right? Or codependency or whatever, right? Denying your anger, emotionality, flattery. Those are the things. I think those defenses, those are the ones. If you have them, pick one of those. If you haven't already picked yours. If it's giant, like the abandon myself, doesn't mean you can't work on that. That's fine, but that's going to be big, and it's going to be hard to see the change in your life. And I think the change in your life is what's going to encourage you to actually do this again and again and again, which I believe is what we need to do. Okay. And what we're really asking ourselves in order to do that, go from that abandon myself. How is this showing up in my life? How does this show up in my life? Right. And if it shows up in my life as having no boundaries, as overgiving is a big one for the 2, right? So I can say I abandon myself because I overgive. What I want to work on is the overgiving. I'm hoping I'm making sense to everybody. Now, next week, we're going to cover this because somebody brought it up earlier, and I think it's important. I'm going to read this whole thing. As we journey on in our new life, which is what we'll get in step 7, we will lose our defensive ways of coping. When this happens, we need to stop and take time to grieve our losses. We need to put them away, cover the shame with compassion, and allow ourselves to grieve the loss of something familiar to us. When the time of grieving is over, we can journey on. So we're going to talk next week. We're going to talk a lot about, or at least a bit, about that the grieving process is part of what we have to do. That is part of what we have to do in order to move on, in order to be able to let go of it. There needs to be a grieving process and a new story that replaces the old story. Okay, go ahead, Ambra.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to say that make me confuse this work because I didn't get maybe the point, what is my point, self-abandon or whatever, I don't know. But the 2 question is, persistent complaint is a form of defense, right? Is what I tell myself when happens something, right?
Well, the persistent, yes, I guess, but the persistent complaint basically is something you bitch about. Tell me something you bitch about.
Oh my
about,
God.
whine about, complain about, all the time.
Yeah, for example, all the time when someone judge me or ignore me.
Okay, all right, so stop. Okay, so I feel judged, right? I think these people are judging me. Okay, so the first step in that is to realize there's something that happened, whatever it is. Somebody looked at you weird, whatever. There's something happened. And then you have a feeling that you feel judged. And then the story you tell yourself is that they are judging you. And maybe they just have something in their eye. You don't know. You have no way of knowing what it is they're thinking, but you think you know what they're thinking. And as a result, you tell yourself a story. And when you tell yourself a story, and what will happen is the feeling that you have, I'm feeling judged, right? Sometimes 4s will stay in that feeling instead of letting that feeling pass or realizing I'm telling myself a story. but then you will react. You react angrily, you pull away, you ruminated over it for 5 days, whatever it is, there's a reaction that you have. That is the persistent complaint. The fixed way of being is your reaction. And those things together, there's a cost to that, and there is a benefit to your ego for that. And that's what the racket is about. Now, what we've added with these next 2 questions is then, why are you afraid of letting that go? Why do you tell yourself that story instead of just saying, whether they're judging me or not is beside the point. That's their deal, not mine. I don't know, right? As an 8, that's easy for me to do. But then the final one is, what would my life look like if that wasn't part of my life? If I didn't react like that, if I didn't tell myself that story. So that's what all of this together, and I've broken it out into parts that probably seem to some people like they don't go together, but to me, these are the ways that I've learned that. So the main thing here is, once, Amber, you realize this is a story that I am telling myself, all the other stuff makes sense. If you cannot make yourself believe that this is a story as opposed to the truth, it's going to be really hard to make the changes.
Okay. Thank you so much. It's more clear, but can I tell you something? You know, when there is some part that, yeah, because my ego tried to protect me, you know,
right? Yeah.
That is clear. But the thing is, sometimes there is people that, yes, they don't have good intention, and I need to hear the intuition that tell me it's not good situation here. You have to leave. You know, I don't want to gaslight myself in the way, you know, I have this fear. That is the fear to letting go, because all the time I say, you know, I gaslight myself to tell me, oh, they are good with you, but it wasn't true. You know, it's like, right. I don't want to gaslight myself. That's the point.
So, well, I don't think you need to, yeah, you don't need to lie to yourself. I think, okay, so you can begin by saying, these people are good to me, and that's a story. And then these people are bad to me, and that's a story. I mean, and once again, this is an 8 looking at a 4, right? But so who gives a shit what they think? Who cares? I don't give a fuck what they think. I don't care. They can hate me, they can love me. Who gives a fuck? They're not even important to me. There are people on my ass. I don't care at all. Can you tell yourself that story?
Oh, yeah, I can try to say, yeah. But, you know, when I have to make a choice, I have to make a choice. For example, I have to leave from some 12-step meeting, which, you know, doesn't work for me. You know, I have to, after the story, whatever story is, I have to make choice. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, and I was being somewhat facetious, like overdone, because, right. Because obviously if I have that much energy, it does matter what they think of me. But I do think this is, now I could be wrong. It feels like 4s really, 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 really care what other people think. 2s, 3s, and 4s really care because they get their identity from outside. But the 4's main desire is to define themselves. Right? So there's already a conflict there because you get most of your identity from outward, but you really want a self-identity. So Elham, go ahead. Yeah, thank you, Amber. Go ahead, Elham. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. I just want to say, Char, I lost you and I didn't hear what you say about after. I just want to tell you that after you say that for 4, it's really important that what they thinking, you know, about me or whatever. Yeah, I don't know if you say something.
I think the 4 does care very much what other people think. I don't know how it's really funny because as an 8, I would say, I wish you could fix that. But that I do think the answer to you is to realize that all of this is a story that you are telling yourself. And it doesn't mean that it's not a true story. Maybe it is true. If it is true, then can I learn not to care about that? If that person is your husband, of course you care about that. If that person isn't, I mean, there are very few people in my life that I care what they think. Very few. I do care what my husband thinks, but I don't care what most people think because it's their own deal, whatever it is. That's their own prejudice from whatever, and it's a story they're telling themselves. So anyway, thank you, Amber. Okay, Elham, to you. Go ahead.
Hi. So sorry, I always was able to write my type, but for now I can't. So I was playing with this and I highlighted myself. So
it's
sorry.
Okay. It's okay. It's fine.
But I believe I'm type 3. Okay. So I answered this question and I used the chart that was under it, the listing of the things that is what is about. I really relate about the way that my ego is forcing me to behave differently. And I didn't write the most important thing, but I wrote about everything else. And this morning while you were talking, I was thinking, wow, this one, it wasn't in your list. I didn't write about it, but and I still didn't. But I won't tell you by heart that this one is so big highlight for me, that I have to take care of, especially my children problems, to help them to problem be fixed as soon as possible. And that's so important in always in my life. That was my focus. My ego thinks that if I don't, I'm gonna be bad mom. I'm not gonna be recognized like I did a good job for my children. I be a loser, and I will not be able to bring my head up in society. That far I go. And my ego thinks that I can control and I can change. If I don't, I will be a loser, and I have to forcefully try to put them in the right track in life, any possible way I can. And then my cost is separation from them. They don't like to hear me over and over. And they sometimes become tired of my voice. I'm anxious, anxiety. I feel resentment, and then the fear of.
Give me a moment here. I'm just going to mention to share. Maybe we can take a moment to close the meeting and then
Yes.
resume.
Thanks for recovering with us.